Game King takes a Lifecoach in today's final campaign. Will one of them send his foe home unpaid? No sympathy for losers at the end.
We're seeing these two players take their seats in what promises to be an extremely exciting match. Lifecoach donning his Evil Genius's jersey. It certainly is good to see him back in the player's seat. What about that?
Yeah, it has been a while. I think both players really ready to show their best here. I think a lot of fans with both players. I think they're very popular as well. Game King obviously being at almost every tournament in the past few months, so definitely gaining a lot of fans in the process and just showing us how good he is at Gwent as well. So I think it's going to be really, to be honest, the best match of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. A real homegrown hero in Game King, who thankfully is a little bit better at Gwent than he is at throwing axes, and obviously the absolute legend that is Lifecoach himself. So this promises to be an extraordinarily exciting match. Now, we're going to be looking at bans and whatnot in just a moment, but what do you like? Do you give any edge? Do you think that Lifecoach is sort of a, he sort of took a little sabbatical from competitive Gwent, at least in the tournament scene, because he has just been 100% focused on Challenger. Compared to Game King's regular tournament activity, which do you think will fare better?
I think Lifecoach in general, from what I've seen, is the better player in my honest opinion, but he has, like you said, he's taken a bit of a break from the competitive scene. He has been grinding the pro ladder, but it's really not the same. I mean, you have to go to tournaments and really, perform at tournaments, beat the nerves kind of, and make sure you don't make any misplays. So, and you're going up against the best competition. Pro ladder, not always the case. So it's really tough to say. I think Game King, in terms of having grinded for so long and doing so well consistently in tournaments, might have the edge in this matchup right now. But Lifecoach, I think, maybe has a higher ceiling in general. And from what I've seen him play, and he's done really fantastic stuff and a great performance in the Challenger, for example. So it's going to be really, really tough to call, I think.
Yeah, Lifecoach really is a truly phenomenal player, and I think some of that can just be notched up to experience. And this guy comes all the way, he's played in other card games, he's played in poker. This guy is a master of cards, essentially, and Game King is really sort of like an emerging prodigy. Like, this guy is just so good. For such a young player, he's just phenomenally talented. So it's a really interesting sort of mix of, like, experience going up against, like, raw talent. It's going to see who comes out on top. Yeah. I'm extremely excited for this matchup.
It's the master against the student, maybe we could say. Because Game King, he had some experience with other card games as well, but not as much as with Gwent, and not so much success as well. I think in Gwent, he's really, he's been in the spotlight for a while, and he's really proven that he's here to stay and definitely compete in pretty much every tournament that he can get his hands on. And I guess he wants to make it to the semifinals, so he's going to try his best. We're going to see some really fantastic games here. We're going to go over the bans and the decks really quickly, and just going to see what each player is bringing and what their strengths are coming into this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. So both players, as you may expect, are indeed running a fairly normalized version of Nilfgaard. A couple of differences between them, primarily between the Guardian and Roach.
Yeah, just a few differences, but I mean, standard Nilfgaard spies with a mirror, of course. Also, King Bran represented by both players, but there are differences in the monster lineups where one player, I believe that is Game King, that does have the Eredin, and Lifecoach favors the Consume, and not just Unseen Elder Consume, but the greedy version with Necro Warriors that we saw Tailbot play fairly well in the first game of the tournament. So I mean, it's hard to say which one's better, but Lifecoach decides to bring some Necro Warriors to the party as well. And to finalize, we have Foltest versus Henselt. Obviously, Lifecoach's Henselt got banned, so we're not going to be seeing it at all. And Game King's Foltest is free to be played and maybe get a win as well.
Yeah, and additionally, there are a couple of brand decks floating about, which I'm sure that you're more than familiar with. But yes, Lifecoach will be unable to play as Henselt, and I actually think that this is a really smart ban coming in from Game King. Henselt, I feel at the moment, due to the coin flip sort of solution implemented within the tournament scene, Henselt is nigh upon a guaranteed win. I mean, if you do play the sort of absolutely finalized version of this deck and you have the red coin, it's near unbeatable. Of course, nothing is unbeatable, but it's about as close as you can get, right?
Yeah, I think Spies and Henselt are both pretty much the best bans because they do so well in general, and specifically in that red coin system, like you said, where you have a guaranteed chance to go second, when that chance is, so you have the chance to play Henselt where it gets, really favored with the red coin and really perform very well and almost guarantee a victory, like you said. So Game King knows this. He thinks maybe Spies isn't as dominant with the red coin, for example, and he decides to, let that Henselt go to jail. It's in prison for now, but Emir Spies is free to roam and free to be played, and I think that's going to make Emir quite happy as well.
You can't jail the Henselt, mate. He's King of Kedwin. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Game King, of course, is going to be the red player in this matchup, which means that he will start out going second and should the series go to 5 matches, he will go second in the final 5th game. So slight advantage to him there, and it really allows him to dictate the pace of the series too, because of course he does get the advantage in that opening game.
And again, maybe the players are a bit nervous. We don't know for sure. They have a lot of experience in tournaments in general, so I don't think this matchup really is going to have too much nerves, just, raw skill and great talent. But GameKing, maybe going up against Lifecoach, a player that's kind of, really high esteem for him. I think in Challenger, he showed that he was a really good player, and he really dominated that event. So maybe GameKing a bit scared even. I mean, maybe he has some nerves there as well. We'll find out very soon.
If you're ever wondering how competitive a player Lifecoach is, he is furiously taking notes before the game has even started. He is staring at his own deck and furiously taking notes. That is dedication to the cause.
As soon as the whistle is blown, Lifecoach knows he's free to do whatever he wants with those deck lists, and he knows he has to start taking notes and start thinking about possible scenarios and strategies and matchups that might, come up in this match between these two players. And it's obviously important to have all these thoughts organized and ready to go before you even start the game, so you know exactly how to execute and maybe not rope too much as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like the Pavko Gale cosplayer is just helping him out, maybe with a few technical issues right now, as we get ready for this first game. So we can get a lovely shot of Master Mirror himself. There he is.
And the players will be starting very soon. It looks like they are now queuing up to find this, fantastic game we're going to see here between GameKing and Lifecoach, a fan favorite, I think, both players. And it's going to be really exciting to see this game as well. And a great finish to this first day of Challenger.
Absolutely. Now, does Lifecoach have... He does have his Challenger ring on. Does he have the Temerian ring on? I can't see it.
Maybe he doesn't want to intimidate his opponent too much. Maybe it's enough with his presence. He'll keep the ring, in his room, locked away, in case, some sneaky thieves are roaming the castle.
Well, yeah, after all, he's not interested in wearing that one this weekend, right? He's all about this, the Ring of the Great Sun. But finally, we are heading into our first game, and it looks like we're going to be heading into a Skellige versus Skellige showdown.
And today seems to be the day of the mirrors. We've seen a lot of them already.
Yes.
And yet one more for the count. We see a Skellige King brand mirror coming right away. And there are some differences, but I think not too many in general.
There's actually a couple of really... There's actually a couple of really interesting differences between the two decks here, primarily in the choice of gold cards. Now, we see GameKing running an almost, dare I say, old-school lineup of golds. He's got Igni, Coral, Madman Lugos, and Suris, whereas Lifecoach is running a more modern variant where he has omitted Lugos and Igni, and he is running Muzzle and Wolfsbane instead.
Yeah, Igni's a big staple in most of GameKing's decks. I think he really likes the card, and he likes, getting that, because it has kind of a very high value ceiling in general, and if you find the right points to play that card out in a certain round, you can get a lot of value from it. I think GameKing really values that. The fact that it's not really capped at a certain point gap really, and it's just a very high ceiling card in general.
Yeah, definitely. I must admit that I'm a big fan of it in this deck because the Whale Harpooners and just the potential that they open up for just lining up some crazy Ignis. I know it's kind of, the pipe dream Igni, but every now and again you hit it and it's very, very satisfying.
And especially with Hensel in the meta, for example, which is a deck that, although it's been banned by GameKing, it's one of the decks and a few others that have all these units you want to line up in one row. They have the same strength, and if people aren't playing around Igni, it gets really dangerous really quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Now, those Armor Smiths may, they may actually come in pretty big. If those Whale Harpooners start swinging, Lifecoach is going to be very, very happy that he has that Armor Smith in his hand. Armor Smith, the card that we've even seen put to great use so far this tournament.
And GameKing having two of them, not just the standard one in this list. He's changed the list just a little bit, maybe teched towards what decks he thinks his opponents would be bringing to this tournament. And we see a pretty standard opening from Lifecoach. Ceres, Olgierd, and Wolfsbane to the graveyard, banished and ready to go. Of course, Ceres, it's a card that kind of defines this archetype a bit.
Oh, absolutely. Suris with her resurrection time. If you don't know Suris, when you play her into the graveyard, she then gets a 4-turn timer, and that ticks down by 1 every time you resurrect a unit. Now, that counts things such as discarding Raiders, because they immediately resurrect once discarded. And when that timer hits 0, Suris jumps out the graveyard back onto the battlefield and helps you really just gain tempo. And you're absolutely right, it's sort of become the signature of Skellige recently.
And here we see GameKing focusing on the same gold card, Ceres, Morkvark, and potentially a Raider going to be going out to the graveyard and obviously going to resurrect very quickly. I definitely don't think he's going to discard a Lugos. That wouldn't be a great idea. We do see the Raider coming out. Just, a little bit of tempo from GameKing trying to stay ahead of Lifecoach here.
Yeah, absolutely. Mind game's good, discarding your Lugos on your first turn is not. So we see GameKing absolutely going for the standard opening. Now this is where the variance becomes quite interesting. Because Lifecoach is running this Wolfsbane, he has to get that into the graveyard, which automatically lowers the tempo from this Bran opening a little bit. So GameKing, despite also using his King Bran, is now 10 points ahead.
And GameKing does have the Olgierd in hand, something you normally want to have in the graveyard and leave those raiders for the Warmonger synergy. Instead, he ended up with the Olgierd in hand, and he has to play it for just 9 points for the silver, which does have the carryover value that helps with the Steris value and also just carry over the next few rounds. So it's not too bad, but it's not a great tempo play in round 1.
Yeah, I really love Lifecoach's thinking behind including Olgierd over Morkvarg. Now, this is quite an unusual choice, and I believe the reason for it is that he wants to guarantee that Surus gets ticked out on her timer at the beginning of rounds. Because Morkvarg, we've seen earlier, right? You play against Uridin, Frost kills your Morkvarg a bunch of times, Surus comes out round 1, you don't get that Surus necessarily in round 2 or 3. Whereas Olgierd sitting safely in the graveyard, it just means that either, unless they want to do a very low value like Katakan or Caretaker, that Olgierd is going to come out at the beginning of the next round and give you valuable times on that Surus counter.
I think also running Wolfsbane kind of indicates that maybe you're not too worried about tempo at the start of round 1, where Morkvarg normally helps a lot, because you have those 12 points coming in a little bit later at three rounds in, but it's still a decent amount of tempo that helps you survive and kind of push that round out.
Absolutely, but that Wolfsbane bomb is ticking down in Lifecoach's graveyard. GameKing's got one more turn until it goes off. Do you think GameKing is really going to push against this Wolfsbane, or do you think he's just going to be fairly happy to leave it at that?
I mean, Wolfsbane does damage and Armorsmiths heal damage, so GameKing has the right answer in his hand to get, a fairly valuable bronze Armorsmith there with, decent amount of points. It also counters that Wolfsbane a little bit, so maybe not right now immediately, but further into this round, if Harpooners are dropped and some more damage is done, he can definitely go for that Armorsmith to get a really good bronze value card.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the point there of Armorsmith somewhat negating the Wolfsbane, actually. Wolfsbane hits for 12 because of the 6 buff and the 6 damage. Armorsmith would actually be a 13 just by repairing that damage. So, yeah, really, really beautiful counter card there when you see the Armorsmith compared to the Wolfsbane. A bronze really taking down a gold.
And GameKing with 3 Harpooners in his hand, maybe a bit too much. You want to wait a bit till the board develops to play these cards where they get maximum value. With, once more units are played, more rows are stacked, and the Harpooners get more value in general. So further into the round, they're better. Having 3 in hand right off the bat, maybe it makes your hand a bit awkward at the very start.
Yeah, expect to see both players stacking rows very, very carefully here, because these are the best players in the world. They know whale Harpooners exist, and they're going to play around them accordingly. They are fully aware that whale Harpooners will play a very large part in this mirror.
And there we see the Wolfsbane doing its magic, buffing King Bran up to 8 and hitting that Olgierd for 6 points. Olgierd already lost his head. I don't think he minds the 6 points too much, and we have the Armorsmith to help him out as well, get back his strength. And of course, we see GameKing, he discarded a Battle Maiden, which kind of says he might just go for the early restore to have that Battle Maiden for multiple rounds, not just that round 3 finish with the restore, and also get the extra Warmonger out to thin out the Raiders.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this match is going to progress from here on out, because it's all about resource committal, right? It's about how comfortable these guys are with committing significant resources in this opening round. We could end up seeing, GameKing pass on the next turn, or it could go to being one of those really deep, let's go into round 2 with 2 cards each, just fist fights. It's going to be interesting to see how each player chooses to proceed.
And the important part is the carryover. GameKing has both Olgierd and Morkvarg, as well as Steris, of course, and Lifecoach only has the Morkvarg, or only has the Olgierd. He does not have the Morkvarg, but, I mean, never mind. We see, obviously, Olgierd switch sides, not a very, not helping GameKing out too much there. The muzzle being very effective for Lifecoach.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lifecoach really showing his preference for Olgierd over Morkvarg there, because he actually prioritized taking that despite the fact it was a -4 compared to muzzling the Morkvarg, because he just prefers Olgierd as a card. He wants those beginning of round Resurrects and that beginning of round Surus to come out, and so he took the Olgierd over the Morkvarg.
And of course, although he maybe loves Olgierd, having the Armorsmith in hand to buff up that Olgierd and denying it from GameKing as well kind of swings that and makes that card. Right now, the muzzle wasn't as effective, but if you think a little bit further in, it's going to be very effective where you can heal that up and deny the heal from your opponent as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, at the point in this matchup, you're really using those Armorsmiths just to repair
the mother
very
goddess,
simple
she
damage.
gave us
Like
a take the wheel.
There's not going to be any weather attrition unless a player chooses to spend their Gremist in such a way. So the Armorsmiths, you can, to be honest, in this matchup, I always think if you can find like 11 or 12 plus points of value from the Armorsmith, you're going to be pretty happy.
And we see GameKing here not discarding the Raider. I think he's saving them for round 3 as a burst option with the Freya res. Of course, in this deck, you don't really have, for example, the Raging Bears that are a 12-point, card to res in round 3. You want something that can generate points, not only points, but also res ticks on the Ceres. And he decides to save those Raiders for round 3 and have that pool that he can draw into with the Warmongers to create not only tempo, but also Ceres ticks just to have a really good finisher in round 3.
Yeah, definitely. This is getting to the point in the game where, honestly, GameKing is going to have to start dropping Harpooners just to deal tempo, right? He's not really going to have any other options available to him, so this could quickly descend into a long round 1.
and this is a tie that Lifecoach might think about taking. Right now, he does have more carryover, I believe, regardless of the Ceres, because he stole that Olgerd. Not only does he get more carryover, but he steals carryover from his opponent, which is huge. And he's given this majestical pass, having lost the coin flip, which he's definitely going to take. He's a player that really values card advantage, and he thinks this is definitely his chance to take it.
Yeah, definitely. And at the beginning of round 2, that Ceres is on a 2-timer. He has 2 Olgerds, so Olgerd will double jump out of the graveyard and bring Ceres along with him. So yeah, Lifecoach and that muzzle for the carryover, really, really great here.
And now this is a game of Udalrics. If GameKing is able to draw that Udalric, he won't be too worried. If Lifecoach draws it back, then he can answer back with that. So it's going to be important to see what these players mulligan and how they draw in round 2.
No surprises.
Just careful there.
There we go, that is 16 points worth of carryover. Lugos, a very nice draw for GameKing, but not his spy. And that Raider is going to get mulligan straight away.
Will GameKing find the Udalric here? He does.
He does
find
oh
it.
My goodness, what a mulligan by GameKing.
GameKing believing in the heart of the cards, not getting rid of that Raider round 1. He knows he's going to draw it, and he's going to mulligan it, sacrifice it to the gods, and then draw the Udalric to try and save this game and get that card advantage back in round 2.
Exactly. GameKing's deck doesn't have any bad cards, and he drew his Uldric just as he wanted, and that is going to be key. But Lifecoach has got his too.
He doesn't only have Uldric, he has Uldric and Summoning Circle. He can really turn this game around and really punish GameKing here. GameKing's going to have to out-tempo Lifecoach in this round in a mirror that's very complicated. I mean, you guys, they basically play the same cards, so it's very hard to pull ahead, especially with, you know, already being so many points behind.
Yeah, I mean, one of the advantages he has is Lugos is really nice in the mirror, because Coral kind of lacks big targets. I mean, sure, you can hit it on, you know, maybe like a 12-strength Bear or something, or your own Uldric, but it's like a 15-point Coral. That's pretty much the upper limit of what you're going to see, unless you're against like Cursed, where, you know, they're playing these huge Berserk Marauders or Great Swords. Unlike that, Harpooner Skellige doesn't have great targets for Coral, so I would value Lugos slightly higher here.
And of course, GameKing, because of the Raider mulligan and the you know, fact that he was forced to mulligan that, he wasn't able to mulligan Harpooner, and that blocks the Battle Maiden from getting res in this turn as well, because there aren't really any targets, unless there is one single Warmonger left, which I believe there is. But GameKing really wants to, you know, get the maximum value from that restore on the Battle Maiden. If he reses it once in a game, it's good, but it's not fantastic. If he can res it multiple times and get that 8 points of value every time for that buffed up Battle Maiden, then he's going to be really happy.
Absolutely, and Lifecoach recognizing the opportunities he has here, employing the now infamous tunnel vision, and there comes the Uldric.
He is here.
And then we're going to see Summoning Circle maybe soon as well, so he has the option. He gets the Raider discard as well, which is huge in terms of points. It makes Uldric only 8 points, so these spies that synergize with the archetype is fantastic. The fact they can synergize with discard, and obviously discard that Raider, thin your deck, get rid of a card you don't really want in your deck all the time, and get, you know, some more tempo because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a perfect draw for Lifecoach there. Nice Harpooner, that's a high tempo card, and then the Raider to go on the discard too. Perfect synergy with Uldric. Like you say, lowering the cost to a mere 8 points, which is very good. The sort of stuff you normally see in Nilfgaard from Rainfarm and whatnot. So both players honestly looking at remarkably similar hands right now. So do you just have to give the edge to the card advantage here?
I mean, we see similar hands, but we see a fairly big point gap on the board, so you start to get worried for GameKing. Is he going to be able to pull back this card advantage and go into round 3 on even cards? If he isn't, we've seen it before in other matchups, if you go a card down into round 3, like we saw with Kolemon and Adzikov, it can sometimes be, you know, game-breaking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one advantage that GameKing does have is his Ceres is on a one-timer, so should he choose to, he can catch up relatively quickly, because that Ceres, of course, will add 7 points to anything that he resurrects. So he does have that option available to him, but that would then set his Ceres to a 4-timer for round 3, and that is not something you want when Lifecoach has double Olgierd carryover.
And already he's 2 cards down and still 6 points behind. I mean, it's not looking good for GameKing. I think maybe that the fact that he tied in round 1 and he couldn't, you know, maybe discard that Raider and you know, take the lead in that round 1 cost him a lot, considering he did not have more carryover than his opponent. It put him in a really tough situation. I think he's going to have a really hard time going into round 3 being on even cards.
Yeah, it's certainly a little bit of a rough position. You've got to like Lifecoach's position right now. That point gap was closed a little bit, but it's still on 6 points. But GameKing does have the first round, so of course he is still dictating the flow of the game. So it's everyone's to play for, but honestly, Lifecoach getting that Uldric was big for him.
If we talk about finishers, I think GameKing does have a bit of an edge here, like you said, with Ceres, and also the fact he can discard. I think he has more Raiders in his graveyard than his opponent, so he has a chance to get the, the multiple Warmonger reses into the Raiders and get the extra tempo and the extra Ceres ticks as well. And of course, the restore target with the Battle Maiden is also a great card to have as a finisher for round 3. But I mean, just the card advantage, it's so huge going into round 3. It's just it's a vital part of Gwent.
Absolutely, especially in a mirror match, right? It's like you got to be blunt and be like, okay, they're playing pretty similar decks. Therefore, the person who has more of one deck than the other is probably going to do better. And that essentially is card advantage. But I like that Lifecoach recognizes the max value Coral available to him and decides to take it, so he doesn't have to take up a lesser opportunity later in the game.
Important to note as well, GameKing, he can roast stack here and kind of dodge the Harpooner damage, but Lifecoach, he's playing a version of this deck that does run the last rate and does have that punish to either play around Harpooner, play around last rate. You can play around both. And if he decides to play around that last rate, the Harpooners are going to get value. If he does it the other way around, it's vice versa. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, definitely. GameKing discarding a Freya there, interestingly, presumably to res chain them out, or even for his restore as a target. But restore is actually potentially unavailable. So I think that it's interesting that he might just res chain just to get Ceres out, because he's really desperate for tempo.
I think he has the chances to get the reses in round 3 to get Ceres out again, but even then, I mean, if he can't catch up in card advantage, like we've said multiple times before, we're kind of overstating it, but it's just, it's so important, it's so vital that you really have to. I think the round 1 really decided the game, that the fact that the GameKing was able to tie there may be a miscalculation, but the 33-point tie there was huge on Lifecoach. He thought about it for a bit. He is the guy that likes taking his time and think about his plays, but I think it was fairly straightforward for him to pass at that moment. Yeah,
honestly, it was a very critical pass, and that's an interesting question. I actually wonder, I'm interested to see what Swim makes of it later, whether he thinks that GameKing deliberately forced the tie, or whether he thinks that it was a miscalculation, because it's very interesting to give Lifecoach that opportunity. It was the perfect spot for him to get back card advantage.
Of course, if your opponent doesn't play Ulrich, it's fine, but Lifecoach is playing both Ulrich and Summoning Circle, so it wasn't going to get by him. He's ready for the situation. He knows what could happen in this matchup, in this mirror matchup, for example, and he was ready for it.
Where do you think we see the Summoning Circle going from here?
I mean, I think it might just get value from a Harpooner, for example, which is going to get decent value, I think, especially in the long round. Maybe also an Armorsmith, depending on the situation. Of course, like Drifa, you can't really copy that. It'll copy whatever is placed on the board. So, in general, it will get normally just bronze value, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly hope so. Like, at least, we say typically bronze value, but that could be a bronze value on a Harpooner or an Armorsmith, which are pretty good. So I think the Summoning Circle is still going to be a pretty nice card here. We're going to see Whale Harpooners start to do a little bit of damage. They can still ping that Aldrich for a fair bit too. But GameKing is running out of cards that he wants to spend, realistically.
I mean, I think he has to spend everything. He has to do everything possible to try and catch up here, but unless Lifecoach has dead cards in hand, he's not going to really do so. So it's tough, I think. Lifecoach obviously looking at his options. Harpooners are still quite decent for him. He does have that value on that Warmonger, although of course it won't die and it'll just pass on the value to the Armorsmith. So not ideal, but still decent to just keep on playing cards and keep on being ahead in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested when we see the Lugos come out. I imagine he wants to keep that for round 3, but it's going to be rough for GameKing. Like you say, he's got to just try to catch up. But in terms of big tempo plays, he is sorely lacking right now.
We'll have to see what targets Lugos has as well, because there aren't that many big bronzes left in GameKing's deck. I think he was running 2 Armorsmiths. We've seen 1 played already, and we have a second one here. And then the 3 Harpooners we've seen as well. So unless he has a Warmonger safe for that Lugos, which he might want to use the Battle Maiden on, for example, I mean, it's tough to say.
Yeah, it could just be coming out for 14 with the Raider.
That might be an option as well, with the Ceres in round 3 as well. It's decent, but not, I think Lugos is better used as a damage, and then have the Warmonger, because obviously Warmongers don't have the option to damage, so it kind of frees up two ways to play the Warmonger and the Lugos out differently, but GameKing might be forced to play it with the Raider there.
Here comes Sig Drifa. Let's see what she's going to go for the Resurrect on.
What do you need?
It's just going to be Grimace. I mean, you can't do the Battle Maiden because there
you
just aren't targets, I think, if you're thinking about Lugos as well in round 3.
Eating the Ceres too, interesting considering it doesn't give him the pass.
It gives him the chance to play more reses in this round while still getting the ticks on Ceres, so it kind of frees him to really play into this round a lot and try and find maybe a dead card from Lifecoach at the very end to try and get that card advantage back, but it's maybe just too late. I mean, the fact that it was 3 strength helped, it's not a 7 strength Ceres, so you still get a decent amount of tempo, but even then he's just still a point behind being 2 cards down. It's never a good situation to be in.
Yeah, absolutely, especially considering that we're talking about, he's sort of fishing for a dead coach, dead coach, Well, you know, that would win him the series, but a dead card from Lifecoach here, and he's not going to find one. Lifecoach's hand is looking pretty good.
And even if Harpooner gets a lot of value, the Armorsmith counters it in the mirror matchup. It works quite well. Other matchups not so much, but because Harpooner does so much damage, and it's not just the 8 strength that it has on its card, but also the deployability. It does a lot of damage, unlike other cards that do, you know, a tiny bit of damage like Wyvern, for example, but not so much.
Just to compare the boards here, it's interesting because while Lifecoach can do, you know, he can hit the large targets, those are able to be healed by an Armorsmith. What you can do in this matchup is just kill targets. You can just kill 3 strengths, as long as you don't think they got the Resurrect. Like if Sigdriff has come out, etc. You can kill lower strength targets just to guarantee the Armorsmith can't heal them up. But in this case, GameKing's actually going to get a pretty okay Armorsmith out of this.
Exactly. You lose 1 or 2 points sometimes, but it's kind of that risk you take. And if you really expect your opponent to have Armorsmith, which isn't crazy in the mirror, I mean, it's a card that's won at least one of it in pretty much every deck.
Yeah.
So I think it's correct to do that sometimes, but other times you have to risk it and just try and get maximum points and hope he doesn't have Armorsmith.
Yeah, and that's what Lifecoach is really trying to do. He's just trying to open up that points gap as much as possible. So it looks like we may just see Lugos come down. Oh.
Armorsmith a bit early, and might have to wait because there are still Harpooners in Lifecoach's deck. We've only seen 2, so he knows there's at least one more. But of course, GameKing going for the early Armorsmith there and might, you know, punish him in the next few turns.
It certainly might. I mean, we might see a lot more damage coming out of Lifecoach here, especially if he chooses to employ that other Armorsmith, and that is really just denying himself future value by playing that Armorsmith so early for GameKing. So, yeah, that might come back to bite him.
And because GameKing has Ceres in his graveyard, he is able to play his Reses and play pretty much all his cards in this round, where Lifecoach has his Ceres on his board, so it's not getting those ticks going. But he has 2 Olgiers to help with that in round 3, so I mean, I don't think he's too worried, to be honest.
No, I don't think he is either. Considering the strength of his hand, I think he's in a pretty comfortable position. Of course, he does not know the contents of GameKing's hand, but if he did, he'd probably be smiling.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy regardless. Summoning Circle might be used now. It's a card that you can't guarantee value because it's a card that kind of depends on your opponent's cards. So he wants to get rid of that kind of maybe luck or RNG that he's going to have in round 3 and just have the cards he really wants to have in round 3 and not leave it up to his opponent's decisions, basically.
Oops, our first 1 second Lifecoach turn. There we go. He is, of course, known to take his time and certainly think about his plays, like we see there. Going for the Summoning Circle, so like you say, just guarantee that value and getting 11 points out of it. Not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. I mean, it's pretty much the standard silver value. Normally when you use Summoning Circle in different situations where it can really excel. Other times it's going to be, you know, pretty average, but Lifecoach decided to bring it to the tournament, and we'll see why throughout this weekend. But I think he definitely has, you know, maybe some great ideas behind that card.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that we'll see it used to great effect should he move on in the tournament, but it is very early in the series to be speculating such things. We are still 0-0. Remember, this is a best of 5 for the final spot in tomorrow's semi-finals, which is very, very exciting. Going to be taking on Freddy Babes, the winner of this game.
It's very important to note as well, Lifecoach did lose the coin flip in this match, and still he has the upper edge. So that's not only worrying for GameKing for this certain, you know, match right now, but for the matchup in general.
Yeah, it's a really critical win. If you win, to be blunt, if you win when you're on blue coin, that's how you win the series. If you win your first game when you're on blue coin and you then get to go second straight after, you're going to be happy about that. That's such a powerful start to a series. So both of these players are good to win from the blue, of course, but this is a very, very powerful start for Lifecoach so far.
Yeah, and we see Armorsmith again getting some decent value. Not great in a short round too, because you can't really, like I said before, depend on your opponent to do damage to get that value from the Armorsmith. Instead, he uses it this turn and just tries to guarantee the value in this round and save his better cards like Sigdrifa or Freya for the round 3.
Yeah, and here we see Lifecoach just opening up that points gap to 12. Lugos has to be committed. He's got to hope Lifecoach has dead cards, and he's got to hope he just starts spending them.
Finally,
right now,
after multiple turns, GameKing is finally able to get ahead by just 2 points, but still he's 2 cards down. I mean, it doesn't really mean too much. I think Lifecoach is still in a pretty good position to really close out the round 3.
Yeah, considering Lifecoach's hand, GameKing has set himself into a horrendous position in this game, despite the fact that he's actually playing fine for the situation. You know, he had to go for this after that round 1, but I think the round 1 pass from Lifecoach is really going to end up being the critical moment of this game.
Not just the pass from Lifecoach, but maybe the blunder from GameKing. I think that the fact that he got that tie instead of, he had the options to go ahead, I think, for sure, by discarding the Raider, for example. So it's tough to say. I mean, obviously GameKing, this is a very hard matchup to call. A mirror match is always complicated, but having won the coin flip, I think he could have done round 1. He could have played round 1 a bit better to guarantee the fact that he could have, you know, kind of got an advantage from the red coin. But instead, Lifecoach, really, like you said, a really good pass, and it was kind of forced GameKing's hand.
Yeah, like you say though, we've spoken about this before, right? If you're going second, i.e. if you win the coin flip, ironically, you can afford lower tempo plays. You just can, because you have that card space to catch up in. We see this with Uridin all the time, playing just 4-strength hounds, or like even just White Frost, but just setting up that longer game plan. So perhaps GameKing didn't utilize that too much.
I mean, I think it's fine the fact that you go second, you really play your low tempo plays, but the problem here was the carryover. He had less than Lifecoach, and that was really the decider in round 2 that he couldn't get the dry pass, for example.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with that Surus coming out. Starting with 16 points on the board is just so powerful, and when GameKing's trying to bleed from there, it makes it really difficult.
And finally, we move on to get to a round 3 GameKing, a card behind. He might get his Surus out, and Lifecoach might not, but even then, I mean, there's more carryover for Lifecoach as well, and just having an extra card in such a short round, having literally 33% more points on average, it's going to be tough to make it here. And Igni, not a great draw in round 3. There might be a mulligan here from GameKing and a Raider.
Oh my goodness, I'm afraid that while it is always early to call, just judging by these hands, GameKing is not going to be having a very good time right now. It looks like this first game may well be going to Lifecoach. He has 1 card up, 1 Resurrect up. It is a Sigdriffer, and GameKing has a Raider in hand. So while, you know, it is a dangerous game when casting to call games prematurely, I think Lifecoach might win this one. I mean,
I'm not a betting man, or otherwise I would bet quite a bit of money here, because I think just being a card up is already game deciding, and GameKing could have a slither of hope if he would have drawn a decent card, you know, a card that generates a decent amount of points, hoping that Lifecoach's cards are dead, and that maybe, you know, having some kind of an advantage there. But with the Raider in hand, the game is, I think, sealed, and there's really not much to do here. I mean, 4 points from hand,
we
not
serve
fantastic.
her who is
No,
virgin,
certainly
mother,
not.
and
Raider
crone.
is not a card that you want to be playing from hand. It is a card that you want to be playing when you discard it from your deck instead. So having that in hand is pretty horrendous, and like you say, in a mirror where a single card advantage can be so game deciding, this is just a death sentence for GameKing.
Although, of course, the Raider is not worth just 4 points, but instead it's worth 11 points, because you are resing the Surus if you know, there's a bit of a mechanic in Gwent where you can discard from hand and the Raider activates that res effect with the Surus, so it'll get the Surus out. You have the Freya and the Raider, it's 2 ticks, but even then I think it just won't be enough, especially with such a great hand from Lifecoach as well.
You certainly can by intelligently using the game's inbuilt discard mechanics by roping the turn. That is very true, actually, very astute of you, but this, it's not going to be enough. It would be a very nice little move, but I just don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, it's a subtle thing that, you know, the subtle details sometimes decide games. In this case, not the case. I think the bigger details are going to decide this one, especially the carryover and the card advantage. But it's a thing that, you know, some players forget. And, you know, obviously these are great players. They know every little thing that happens in this game. They know all about all the little secrets. They're very sneaky players, but in this case,
we serve her
being
who is
sneaky won't be
virgin,
enough for
mother,
him.
and crone.
Absolutely not. Here we see the Priestess of Freya chain, which will get out the Surus when this Whale Harpooner is red, so no sneaky discard needed. And we see the Harpooner come down onto the Armorsmith there, giving GameKing the lead by a whopping 8 points. But I'm afraid with the 4 from hand and a Priestess of Freya and a Sigdriffer available for Lifecoach, it is not going to be enough, and Lifecoach is going to take this first game.
And taking the first game, having lost a coin flip, is, you know, huge for Lifecoach. I think he's going to have, you know, a lot of hype going into the next game. He's going to be really excited, really ready to go, because if he wins that next game, already a 2-0 lead, with his mental fortitude and maybe GameKing, it's a bit nervous, because I mean, you're 2-0 down, you have to reverse sweep the last challenger champion. I mean, it's going to be tough for him mentally as well.
It's very, very rough. GameKing really has to keep his composure here, and the reason I say that is because the first game of the series is the game that you're mentally prepared the most for, because, you know, the players found out what coin they were, etc. yesterday, and they were like, okay, GameKing will have been like, okay, great, I'm starting second. I'm going to start with my brand deck. I'm super confident on that. I can start out 1-0 up. I've got the red coin, brilliant. And then things go wrong. And all of a sudden, you have to be able to deal with that. You've just got to be able to mentally go, okay, things didn't go as I had planned, and I've got to readjust. Whether he keeps going on to Bran, I think that we tend to see GameKing change quite a lot when he loses on the leader, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him swap. So it'll be very interesting to see how he proceeds within this series, because he's really just got to just gather himself up, wipe the slate clean, and just play for, and just play to get back into it, essentially.
You have to really adapt to the situation as well. I mean, considering that you're going down already in the first matchup, you have to, and you, with Redcoin, like you said, I mean, it's huge mentally to lose that game where you think you have the great advantage. You're playing maybe a deck you're very comfortable with to start off the matchup, and you lose, it's like, oh my god, I have to really start changing my game plan and start playing very seriously, because any little mistake can cost me not only the game, but maybe the whole match and the whole tournament. So it's tough for GameKing for sure.
Yeah, really difficult losing that match when you're so prepared for it. You know, these players have been hyping themselves up and preparing for a while, and he knew he was going first. He's been planning to use that deck, and losing with it will be a crushing blow. But he is far from out of this yet. That is simply 1-0 to Lifecoach. Both stellar players, still everything to play for. And of course, there are many more games to come in this series. And it's going to be interesting to see what the players lead off with next. If you're Lifecoach, you've chalked up your Skellige win. So what do you lead with now you're going second? Do you just roll the Spies?
You have Elder Consume and you have Spies left. Two very strong decks, especially if you don't have, you know, direct counters for Elder Consume. If uncountered, it can get very messy very quick. The carryover is, you know, exponential with the Neckers. They start growing and growing. No one knows how that happens, but some kind of, you know, base infestation from the Neckers. And there's just you can't even count them. I mean, there's just too much if you don't stop that early. Although GameKing has the option to maybe with Coral, for example, to shut that down with Skellige, so he definitely has options in his decks to play around that. But they're two very scary leaders, I think, Amir and Unseen Elder.
All right, I believe if my eyes did not deceive me, we're going to see GameKing playing his Uridin. It looked like he was about to click on it. Of course, I'm now going to be entirely wrong, but it did look as if he was clicking on his Uridin there. And I love GameKing because he's such a wonderfully emotive player. You can see him in between games, scratching his head, looking puzzled, wondering where it all went wrong. But that's the great thing about GameKing. That doesn't upset him. It just interests him. He's legitimately just going to be searching for a way to correct what went wrong, and that is one of the things that makes him such a fantastic player.
He's a very positive player, and that not only affects, you know, his outlook on life, but also the fact that he can, you know, come back in after a loss and say, you know, it doesn't matter too much. And we're going to see GameKing bringing the full test, I believe it is. It is the full test.
You baited me.
A very standard value filter we've seen before, also 27 cards, and also including a first light to counter weather, and Lifecoach coming in with the greedy consume, Necker Warriors, Neckers, Vran Warriors. I mean, it's a scary thing to see. Yeah,
this is a really greedy consume list, and looking at GameKing's full test, he doesn't necessarily have too much to deal with it. He has a lacerate, sorry, not a lacerate, he has a muzzle at his disposal. And he's got a margarita as well. I'm afraid I don't see that as enthusiastically as Mega Mogwai, but he has a margarita at his disposal. What do you think of this matchup? This looks to me to lean a little bit towards greedy.
I mean, full test doesn't have, you know, options like Coral to completely check them the Neckers, and I mean, normally in this kind of consume, you want your Neckers out as soon as possible to copy them early before the consume start triggering, so that every single Necker copy gets, you know, a maximum amount of ticks in the graveyard and can really start growing to have not just, you know, a few strong Neckers in round 3, but every single Necker buffed up and ready to go.
Absolutely.
And if you play it soon, then you're weak to muzzle, so it's a tough call. Of course, we see Lifecoach with 2 Neckers.
Yeah, I was just going to hit on this. This is such a key draw that he just got in that mulligan, because all of a sudden that muzzle just doesn't matter.
We see 2 Neckers and the Shadow just in case, because we've seen situations in other tournaments, the past Gwent Slam, where the Neckers are a sneaky bunch. They like to hide away in the deck and not come out in round 1, but here they definitely come out in force, and I think Lifecoach is not going to be too worried about that. Definitely has a target for the Necker Warriors and really the base of his game plan.
Yeah, for sure. I find it so interesting that he hit that double Necker draw, because that turns muzzle from
for this
winning
most
the
beautiful
game
of maidens, I shall fight 100 duels.
Because it just makes no difference, because as soon as you hit the Necker Warrior on that Necker, it's like, sure, you've lost 1, but you still have the core of your deck remaining. So such a fortunate mulligan, to be fair, for Lifecoach there.
And we also see a great trio of cards. We see the Harpy, the Vran, and the Slizzard that work great in conjunction, because of course the Vran can eat the Harpy, and then the Slizzard can bring out another Harpy and just feed those eggs, feed that breakfast to that Vran, and he's going to get really big and also going to get a lot of tempo from that Harpy synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. You end up with one pretty dense Vran, but the Slizzard is just such an important bit of toolkit that was added to monsters recently. Really opened up a lot of consume-based gameplay for them because of its just absolute flexibility, and even being used in Wild Hunt variants for extra riders and stuff. So Slizzard, such an MVP card for monsters right now.
Yeah, the thinning is fantastic, but not in obviously in consume. It not only thins, also adds that extra consume tick as well. So it really helps out. I think it's going to make a big difference here in how big the Neckers grow.
Do we see the immediate muzzle?
We might see it from GameKing if he thinks that there are no more Neckers left in Lifecoach's hand. Of course, Lifecoach has prepared for just a situation. He makes GameKing's cards a 6-point gold. Not fantastic. And he obviously has the answers to bring out more
Here
Neckers.
It comes. It's a 6-point muzzle, boys. Let's go. And that other Necker is just going to drop on the board to answer it. And GameKing's face is going to sink.
Although, of course, we also have the option from Lifecoach, if he wants to play Gills and try and find his own muzzle to take back that Necker. Maybe he doesn't like this, you know, kind of thieving personality from GameKing. He wants his Necker back. Maybe it's more of a revenge thing, but of course you can just play one from hand and be kind of in the same situation, but a few points behind.
Definitely. I think that that would be a pretty vengeful use of Gills just to get back a 3-point Necker. But more importantly, that Necker Warrior chain is open to him, which is the absolute core of this deck. And there we go. Necker number 2 comes down. GameKing's eyebrows go up. He knows the muzzle was in vain, and all of a sudden it's thinking hat time for GameKing.
And now he has to really focus on either stopping this Necker train, that's one option, or out-tempoing it to the point where you go so high in tempo in the early round ones that because Lifecoach's deck plays so progressively and starts amounting points so slowly at the very start, because you're playing 7-strength Necker Warriors, 3-strength Neckers, not big plays at all. But if you start playing John Natalis into Blue Stripe Scouts, into Reaver Scout, I mean, you can start getting a lot of points very quickly, especially with Commander's Horn in your hand. So if he out-tempos quickly, he can really put Lifecoach in a tough situation.
Yeah, he certainly can, and that is one thing that Foltest is extraordinarily strong at. He is fantastic at just smashing out that tempo, which is really great. And he's already got a double crewman pocket there between Ronvid and the Blue Stripe Scout as well. The good thing for GameKing about Lifecoach's deck, the Greedy Consume, is it is nigh upon entirely proactive. You know, yeah, okay, you can maybe, you know, get a Trebuchet, no, sorry, get a Drowner or something out if you want, but it's not going to keep up with, like, the Blue Stripe Scouts, the Trebuchets. GameKing has the tempo here, but Lifecoach just has that insane level of carryover that you can get.
And we see GameKing respecting the Neckers, choosing to play a Trebuchet early in that double pocket, like you said, of Crewman, and he wastes essentially 6 points there because he's not hitting anything to the sides of that Necker, but he also gets a Necker that, if he doesn't get out now, it might be a 10 or a 12 or a 14-point Necker in round 3, so he starts cycling those Neckers early. There's only 2 left in Lifecoach's deck now, even though he already used a Necker Warrior, so, I mean, slowly he can kind of, you know, get really into that and try and get those Neckers out as soon as possible. There's still, you know, baby Neckers, just 3-strength Neckers. Absolutely.
By the way, we apologize for the slight robot voice you may be hearing every now and again. Apparently the issue's actually been found, but it'll be fixed by tomorrow. We couldn't fix it live. However, you're right. He is respecting the Neckers, and we saw this used a great effect in Gwent Slam too, just killing them over and over again. And the pass comes in from Lifecoach immediately. So interesting. Maybe he just does not want to deal with those crewmen.
And of course, we still see the Necker at. I mean, first of all, he's messing up GameKing's draws, where he hasn't really thinned his commandos out yet. But of course, we see GameKing drawing perfectly, so forget I said anything. And he still has a little bit more carryover than GameKing as well, so you can't really get the dry pass from GameKing here as well. And GameKing is not playing Thaler in his deck.
Absolutely, and we see a Harpy come out, the famous Monsters Mulligan, but a Karen he will be very happy with, however. So Karen, a great card here, can do target removal and obviously synergizes very nicely with all of the Neckers in your deck. So yeah, pretty interesting options for both players here. We're seeing a very traditional Trebuchet Foltest go up against a Consume that's actually for once not drawing horribly.
And Margarita, great draw as well for GameKing. He can lock that Necker and kind of, you know, at least get rid of one Necker from joining the party, but Slizzard can just draw more from the graveyard, so not a great solution, really.
Yeah, Slizzard really finding so many ways around, so many answers to this card. Really fantastic card, as we previously mentioned, and I'm wondering if we just see sort of more effort go into just getting more Neckers in the deck before we see the Consume train.
Although we see, of course, we don't see any more Necker Warriors in his hand right now, in Lifecoach's hand, and he can get the Necker Warrior from the graveyard, but then he can't really get the Neckers if that Necker is locked, and he can't cycle it in time. So there's only one Necker left in deck right now because of that round switch and that fourth Necker coming out. So Lifecoach is in a bit of a pickle. Not the worst situation in the world, but he has to really think out his plays here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because now there's a double crewman between Ronvid and the Blue Stripe Scout. That means that Trebuchet can kill that Necker and get what I believe would be the last remaining one out of the deck. So yeah, Lifecoach is actually on a very thin line here where he's got to be very careful with how he moves forward.
And that last Necker can get copied, but if you can't have another Necker to be played on board, you can't draw one in round 3, then your Neckers are gone forever. They're in the bottom of your deck, the very depths of the abyss of your deck even, and they're not going to find any value there. But of course, Lifecoach with the K-Ren, bumping up that Necker to 4 strength and saving it from that Trebuchet.
Yeah, I really love that. Not only does he bump up the Necker to 4 strength, he also denies the crewman pocket, which is a source of so much damage when those Trebuchets are in play. Of course, GameKing is going to focus on immediately restoring that with an additional Blue Stripe Scout. Really beautiful draws for GameKing this round.
Well, I mean, the Reaver Scout might be in trouble because I think there isn't a target right now. We see 2 Trebuchets in hand, 1 played in round 1, and of course all the Blue Stripe Scouts and Commandos out of his deck. So At the moment, no target. It could find one later on. Of course, we do have siege towers from Volta in this Volta deck as well from GameKing, so he still has his options, but that Reaver Scout may be a bit out of place right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's finding himself potentially dropping a card down again, which is really not a situation he wants to be in, but it'll be interesting how he handles this. Realistically, how long do you want to play this round against Consume Monsters?
That's the scary thing. If you play it too long, your opponent just gets all his carryover ready to go, and you're facing a ton of carryover for round 3, sometimes upwards of 30 to 40 points in some situations, so it gets really sticky really quickly. If you go for a short round, you're giving the Vrans and the Harpies and all these, long round effects a ton of points, whereas Volt doesn't really have that long round effect, and the Crewman pockets and the Trebuchets really.
Beautiful Harpy shot. While it doesn't get its 1 tempo, what it does do is disrupt that Crewman pocket that we keep talking about. Of course, Crewman adds additional damage to Trebuchets when they fire, and if there's 2 next to each other, then it acts as a double boost. So the fact that Ronvid was forced to jump back to defend Maid Bilberry on the siege road is actually a really nice boost to Lifecoach.
And Lifecoach committing a Vran here. Vrans might not seem like much at the very start. They're 6 strength units to consume. Doesn't seem like all that scary of a unit. But the fact that it adds a point to every single Necker in your deck, you don't notice. But once these Neckers start coming out, they're at 15, 16, 17 strength. And you say, what went wrong? Like, when did this happen? And it's this Vran working in the shadows in the background and really doing his job quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Vrans are really the engine unit. We love saying engine unit, but they truly are one of the engine units of the Monster faction right now. So it'll be interesting to see when he chooses to commit. Oh, Necker Warrior, perfect. So that's Slizzard play I really, really like. I like that he's just committing to getting more Neckers in the deck, recognizing, yep, that is my win condition. Better make sure this keeps going. And
it's important to do this now and not later on in the round, because every consume tick that these last Neckers that are added aren't available for, then obviously they're not going to be boosted as well. It's not a retroactive boost. It's only once they're in the deck. So the earlier you do that, the earlier all these Neckers are getting boosted, and not just 1 or 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you want to do that before you slam that second Vran down, even before the first Vran's done too much, and definitely before that Unseen Elder comes out, because you want that triple boost to every Necker in your deck. So, pretty good hands for both players. If you have to give an edge to one player's hand right now, is there one that you pick? I think Lifecoach is approaching the point where he really gets on a roll here.
Yeah, I think it's important to know as well, Lifecoach playing a greedy consume version that doesn't have 3 Necker Warriors. It only has 2. So a bit safer, a bit, not as greedy, maybe a bit of a safer choice there, but only having 2 Necker Warriors limits the amount of Neckers you have in your deck, but it also says, I'm not going to force this too much. I'm not going to have, these 7-point bronze plays that, invest into a carryover for later, but don't do much to me right now in terms of burst tempo. So I think it's important that Lifecoach made the decision, because it's really important, because not much people are doing that really.
Definitely, and there we go. We see the Vran being fed its eggs, like you said, for breakfast. So those are going to start adding significant tempo to the board when they start getting eaten, which is really, really important for Lifecoach here, as he tries to maintain that point gap as much as possible to let him sort of actually, ironically, dictate the flow of the round, despite the fact GameKing won round 1. So this is getting into a relatively scary place for GameKing now, I think.
Yeah, now we know Lifecoach has played 2 Necker Warriors already. He's maximized the amount of Neckers he's going to have in this game, and now he decides to maybe play Unseen Elder as well, get his Harpies out, and also get those Harpy eggs, maybe helping the Vran out so it doesn't get too big. And Margarita coming out instantly, locking that Necker, but we see Shadow in Lifecoach's hand. He has the answers.
Shadow is such a fantastic card. I love seeing it played these days, because when that card was added to the game, everybody went, yeah, this card is probably going to be good when stuff is added that makes it good. Well, we are certainly at that day now, because as you see it getting played in Challenger right now, here comes the Necker.
There we see the big brother at 7 strength, the little baby's only at 4 strength, but they're going to get bigger and bigger as this game goes on, and Unseen Elder now can get its maximum potential and really start, maybe eating the eggs, maybe eating the Harpies as well, thinning his deck, because he still has 2 Harpies in his deck as well.
Yeah, we can see some nice anti-egg play should GameKing choose to here. That looks like what he's going to go for. He's just going to pop those eggs, deny them the bonus strength, and also get the Harpies out the way of that Vran so he can't eat them. But it is not enough, as those Harpies keep coming out, denying Ronvid even the fall test boost. Poor guy he just does not get off, does he?
And
what
again,
a horrible day.
We have flashbacks. GameKing is 2 cards down, round 2, no spy, and still he's at the same amount of points. He's not even really far ahead. So Lifecoach going to generate more carryover, going to take it kind of slow, I think. Get his Harpies out for sure, try and thin his deck out, and maybe keep his Manticore, his Gills to get those strong plays for round 3. He's going to have carryover and card advantage. I mean, what more could you want?
Yeah, so we're talking a lot about Lifecoach's game plan here, because of course it is the very sort of attention-grabbing side of the board right now, setting up this engine. But if you're GameKing, what are you planning to do right now?
You're planning to, you have Sonny, definitely planning to draw Dijkstra. Dijkstra is the finisher for Northern Realms. It's the only really super high tempo card that you can use it that can really maximize his chances. Of course, we don't see Igni in this deck. He likes Igni a lot, but not so much in Foltest. Doesn't really have a slot, I think, in this deck. So I think his real chance is Dijkstra here, but even then, I guess Horn as well, you can save it for round 3. And of course, the Infantryman, we haven't seen them yet. It's a 21 strength play.
So GameKing goes down into round 3, 1 card down. That is going to be rough against this Consume lineup. But like you say, there are infantry abound. If Dijkstra pulls those out, that's in happy days. There's Dijkstra, there's Horn. GameKing has a lot of really high power cards remaining. So
Maidens, I shall
it
fight
is far from
100
over yet,
duels!
but Lifecoach has managed to set his Neca train up, but it's only dropping into 6.
And of course, GameKing has to mulligan here. He has to draw. Dijkstra has to try and draw him because that's really going to be his win condition. He knows the Reaver Scout would be dead, and he doesn't draw the Dijkstra. A card down, and suboptimal cards in hand, cards you don't want to see as finishers in round 3. So I think it's tough for GameKing right now.
Yeah, I think it's very tough for GameKing too. I mean, what can he do? The Siege Towers are nice for numbers, he can set up a crewman for those. He's got Ronvid, he can make a crewman pocket with Shani. He can get one of those double boosted, the other one single boosted. He can Horn after that. He can... Well, okay, he can get 5 targets for Horn.
He's missing out key pieces in his deck, though. I mean,
yeah,
he's been really unlucky with the draws. 9 cards left in the deck. He has Infantryman, Stennis, Dijkstra, all in his deck. Cards that you want as finishers, cards that really add that burst tempo and give you a huge edge against other decks.
I mean, when you really get into fights, like tempo fights, round 3 with Northern Realms, let's be frank, it's DJ and the gang, right? Like, you need Dijkstra out. He is a phenomenal finisher card, arguably one of, if not the best single card finisher in the game, when used correctly in a deck. And when you don't get that and you get such an engine as this, it's gonna be rough.
Margarita Res will be decent, but will it be enough? I mean, being a card down and having cards that maybe aren't as ideal. Lifecoach's hand, on the other hand, it's decent. It's not, it's not a Dijkstra. It's not, cards that get generate a ton of value. But Monster Nest is really good. Manticore is, decent 13 points.
Well, if the Gels hits into the Toad Prince, that's...
Especially if he finds Toad Prince, then it's a lot more, and it not only, increases the value from the Gels and the Toad Prince, but also from the Monster Nest.
And I believe, judging by what I've got on the deck list here, the only options he can get from Gels are Abaya or Toad Prince. So he's got a 50-50 for the Toad Prince, unless I'm mistaken.
And he has the Caretaker in terms of gold as well.
Yes, he does. So that is... He may even choose to Caretaker the Margarita just to deny it from GameKing, which would be savage.
You deny it from GameKing, and you'll also block that Siege Tower, so it really isn't that bad at all. We see the Muzzle instead.
Oh, neither of the cards I was talking about. That's actually a horrible draw.
That's terrible, so... Maybe the tides have turned. I mean, this is really the worst that the Lifecoach could have gotten here.
That is the double 50-50 losing there, and that is really savage for Lifecoach. I mean, he's still in an okay position, but no Toad Prince and no Caretaker is really rough indeed.
I think he knew he had the chance to play Caretaker there and deny that Shani, who went for it, but again, we were saying GameKing got unlucky. Now Lifecoach is getting unlucky. Not the greatest draws, like you said.
He's going to muzzle the Ronvid to deny the Horn target and deny the crewman.
He's
gonna do it, he's gonna do it! The 1 value muzzle, yes!
The 2 value muzzle.
2 muzzle, of course.
Quick math.
I don't want to, I don't want to discredit Ronvid, but that is phenomenal. Seeing Ronvid get muzzled, I don't know why, but that is so satisfying.
So we saw GameKing going with the 6 value muzzle. He thought he had the record there, but Lifecoach says, no, I'm gonna beat you in this series of Gwent and also in the muzzle matchup. He gets the 2-point Ronvid mulligan there, or the 2-point Ronvid muzzle there in the end, and now we want to see from a gold card.
Yeah, these boys really redefining the commonly used phrase muzzle meta right now. Oh man, I just love that Ronvid muzzle so much. But honestly, in terms of crewman and in terms of Horn deny, it's not even too bad. Like, it did value, which is what all you can ask of any card, right?
Yeah, in the end, it will add up to maybe about, I believe, 7 points of value because of the Horn and the...
Yeah, I believe so.
So it's not too bad. I mean, it ends up being, a 9-point muzzle, so it's not the worst thing in the world. It's still pretty bad for a gold card, though.
Oh, no, I think it's 8 points of value, actually. 2 from the muzzle, 4 from the Horn, 2 from the boost.
That is true.
8-point muzzle, boom, let's go. Boomba with that muzzle. So this is still looking actually remarkably closer than it should have been.
Margarita being forced right now. You obviously can't Horn before the Margarita and the Shani, so Margarita will probably come out here. I don't expect anything else really. I think it's still a pretty decent lock on the Vran, not only because it obviously resets it, but also locks it and doesn't give more points to the Necro as well. Or it might be a Necro lock, depending on how many Necros are left in the deck, but I believe it's only, it might not be any Necros left at all, so we're going to see the lock on the Vran instead.
Okay, so that Commander's Horn is currently representing 16 points of value, which means that Lifecoach needs 21 points, but he's got the Elder, he's got the Monster's Nest.
I think it might just be very
close.
Gonna have to depend on if I believe there aren't any neckers left in the deck. We will find out now. There definitely are not.
There are not. If Lifecoach doesn't eat it,
Can my mates honor
you see Rompit there, obviously being eaten, but coming right back up. And Mantra Nest only needs to be worth, you know, very little points, just 12 points if you got it.
It's that ghouly boy coming out, and he's going to eat the mana core. There we go. That's going to be Lifecoach taking the second game of the series, going 2-0 up in a rivetingly far closer than that matchup potentially looks at the beginning. Consume versus Foltest fight.
I think Lifecoach had all the answers when he needed them. He had the extra neckers, he had the shadow, you know, helping him out, making sure he draws all the neckers he needs in this matchup. And of course, Game King, you don't draw Stennis, you don't draw Dijkstra, you don't draw Infantrymen. You are in a ton of trouble. And maybe he lost because of skill in the first matchup, because of luck in the second. You know, what's left for game 3? What's going to happen?
Environmental hazard? I'm not sure.
It might be that.
What else can you lose from, really? Like, it's pretty cold here, you know? It could maybe like a blizzard or something. But yeah, that is really bad luck for Game King there. He's going to be kicking himself. I mean, just like no Temerian infantry. How do you manage that? When I play, I draw all 3 round 1. Like, get good, Game King.
And we see Lifecoach very pumped there, very hyped, ready for the next game. I mean, 2-0 up. Big challenger event, you're happy, you're hyped for the next game. You just one more game and you're in. But of course, the reverse sweep, we saw Game King talking about it. He goes 2-0 up, he gets very confident, he thinks he's in the semifinal already, he starts thinking about that, and then all of a sudden you reverse sweep and you're going home.
Yeah, so maybe if he goes 2-0 down, he focuses on the current game and then wins.
He's countering his own mental meta, so it might be, you know...
He's his own anti-meta.
He's 10,000 IQ plays from Game King, dropping 2 games, and then reverse sweep and dodge his own, you know, mental, you know, problems. So maybe that might be it. But one more game for Lifecoach. It's going to be so close. If he gets that, I mean, he is on blue coin at least, so Game King has that upper edge at least. He will be going second in this matchup, so he has that chance to maybe try and fix his red coin gameplay in this match. But it's tough. I mean, it's really tough. Having to win 3 games in a row against Lifecoach, against the defending champion, it's going to be really hard. Yeah,
it's really rough. We may get to cast our first ever double 3-0 in one day, which would be really bad fortune for Game King, because that second game was far closer than the history records will show. That was a really nail-biting game, and this series is certainly living up to the hype. Even with such bad draws, Game King managed to make it so close. That game was his if the Dijkstra had come out, because that Gels was just disastrous.
And we're going to go into the game very shortly, and we have to really note, I mean, Lifecoach, he has to win with the strongest deck in the game. I mean, Emir Spies, it's really the strongest deck, and he has to win just 1 game out of 3. I think he's pretty happy about the deck that he has left, and Game King may be a bit scared as well, because, I mean, going up against a deck that maybe is tier 2 or high tier, you know, low tier 1, you think, oh, I have a chance, you know, get some good draws, play pretty well, we can probably do it. But against Spies, a deck that's been feared for months now, it's going to be tough mentally.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Nilfgaard, playing in front of Emir for the Sun Ring, and you've got to beat Nilfgaard 3 times. That's not a position that many players would find enviable.
No, it definitely is, and we see right off the bat, Game King is bringing Aerodin, a great deck we've mentioned before. With the red coin, you can really play for your setup plays in round 1 and make sure you can play your Frost out, play your lower tempo plays like the Frost Hounds, for example, and then get that game, the board state really in your favor, and then start adding in the tempo with the Riders and the Irish, for example. So Game King, I think, is pretty hyped about the red coin in this matchup.
Yeah, I think he's obviously, Aerodin is a red coin deck, right? Every player you ask says that. It's like, oh, so I guess you're playing Aerodin on the red coin. They're kind of like, well, I would never play it on the blue one. So yeah, Aerodin is a very conflict-dependent deck, but it does perform very, very nicely when you get to play in that reactive fashion. So will be an interesting match. Aerodin can do pretty well against Spies.
And we see Van Hemar. I mean, that's the big weather clear. You don't normally see the bronze weather clears in the Nilfgaard deck. It's a deck that's very competitive in its bronze slots, and there is no space for bronze weather clears. You like to take the Van Hemar. He can, he's decent with overdose, a decent amount of points, but in this matchup, it's definitely going to be the weather clears. Yeah, absolutely. We see Game King pulling off the reverse Petrify, all 4 golds in hand. That is a huge boon, but it does make Gels rather pointless. Not so much pointless, but
definitely diminished.
Definitely, if you draw the 1 silver you didn't want, you don't have the option to get the 2nd gold, so it becomes tricky. I mean, we already seen some bad Gils draws in the last game from Lifecoach, so maybe Game King decides to honor that tradition and also find some maybe unideal silver draws as well. We'll see. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of the classic, yeah, I drew all 4 of my golds and I'm running Renew and Royal Decree. Oh, God, never mind. So it's going to be an interesting opener for Game King, because essentially he only really has high power plays in his hand. He's sort of lacking his normal stuff. So Lifecoach gets a kind of a free pass, right? Like, he can set up and he'll probably get White Frosted. I imagine he'll get White Frosted. yeah, I mean, GameKing's going to have time. Lifecoach, of course, here roping it out. It's something he likes to do. He likes to really think about his plays. He might just go for the dry pass, but going for the dry pass, you're giving Aridin control of the game, and Aridin in the long round 3. I mean, Spies is the one deck that can really generate a ton of points in a long round 3, because it says, you know, I have these synergies that work very well together. If you don't stop them, I'm going to generate 200 points in a round. But Aridin, I mean, 3 Frost, you have 1 clear only. If GameKing plays his Frost right and he can really, you know, play his weather correctly, going into a long round is going to be really tricky.
Yeah, you're definitely right on that. Aridin being able to control the length of the rounds he plays is just absolutely ideal for him. So I imagine we'll see a very short round 2 from GameKing because he wants that Frost to deal this damage. But the problem is, if he spends all of his Frost and then Vanamar happens, you've got the bounce for Vanamar too, right? You've got Emir sitting there, so that could get really problematic for GameKing.
It's going to be interesting here. We're going to see maybe a Rider coming from GameKing's hand, or maybe just a Slizzard decides to drop that. Instead of goes for the Rider, it opens up the chance for the Slizzard to be a 12-point play with the Rider coming out as well, and it also thins his deck out later on. So I think with what he had in hand, it was the best solution there.
Oh, I think it was 100% the correct play. Riders coming out of Slizzard is really nice, but that Frost draw is not.
And we don't see any Frost Hounds yet, something you want to play those Frost from. So
there's a Frost Hound.
Finally, they come out to play. We'll see if they play in this turn or just in one long abomination of a round 3 with, you know, just frosty lanes all around.
Absolutely, that's what we like to see. Crack and open a few cold ones with the boys all over the lanes, and that is GameKing's plan for this. We'll see a relatively short round 2, because I imagine he just wants that Frost to destroy Nilfgaard.
And again, Lifecoach, he's roping even the mulligans, making sure he has the maximum amount of time to think about his plays and his game plans and how to approach this very tricky matchup. I mean, GameKing, if he wants to pass now, he might get draw badly in round 3, and maybe a Vanamar, like you said, could really decide the game a bit. And a long round against Spies, even if you're Aridin, is always scary. They generate a lot of points very quickly out of nowhere. So maybe he decides to go for, you know, a mid-range round 3, gets rid of some of the engine units like the Enforcers and like the Terror Brigades, and then go for, you know, a 7 to 8 card round 3 maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think you fundamentally have to go mid-range, because if you go, you lose the short. You get Joaquim'd in the short, right? So you've got to go mid-range, because the long, those Imperial Enforcers, if they're not dealt with efficiently, which to be fair, you know, he's got a fair few cases of Drowners in his hands. He could deal with the Enforcers, but you're right. Like, it's when you start looking at the individual cards that are played in Nilfgaard and you start seeing things like, oh yeah, there's an Iris. Oh yeah, there's the Vanamar. Oh yeah, there's Menno. There's so many huge point engines in that deck that a long round can just be crazy to play against.
And GameKing, again, if Van Hemar isn't used right now, if it's used right now, GameKing can just pass and say, I don't care if I'm a card down, I'm going to weather all your roads next time. You're in trouble. Well, of course, we can use it with Emir as well and just bounce it, like we just saw with Peter before, so that's always going to be an option as well.
So here we go. We see the White Frost cleared up. Vanamar's going to come back to the hand. That, of course, being Emir's leader ability, playing a card, then returning one to your hand. And that is going to mean that GameKing knows Vanamar's in the hand, which is an important bit of information.
And that's White Frost already dealt with. Can't be played again, of course. Nothing to res weather cards just yet. And of course, we see a Spy in Lifecoach's hand. We see him obviously being a card because of the dry pass in round 1. And we don't quite see Frightener just yet in GameKing's hand. So maybe it's going to be an issue of card advantage once again.
Potentially, yes. I think that GameKing is going to struggle to spend things that he doesn't want for round 3, because if you look at his hand, he's got a Manticore he can drop. Maybe that'll open up a little bit of a point gap, but realistically, you look at his hand and he wants this stuff for round 3.
And we don't see Iris and we don't see Frightener either, 2 cards that you really might need in this round for GameKing. And of course, we have the one very interesting interaction. Lifecoach does have Iris in his hand. If it were to go on GameKing's board and then die, GameKing could use his Slizzard to draw out that Iris from his own deck. So very tricky, subtle, little intricate detail in Gwent there that might come in handy for GameKing if he knows about it.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And a really nice detail to point out. We've actually seen that be very controversial in Gwent's line when it was actually missed in some games. But yeah, it would be really cool to see that Iris-Slizzard interaction in play. That's something that we've been kind of hoping to see in tournaments. But we see the Imperial Forces come down, just start to make their presence known on the board.
And they're playing right into the Frost just to dodge that Drowner damage as well, which of course would not only damage them from the Drowner movement, but also hit them under the Emir and kill them instantly, basically, which is not a good thing for Enforcers.
No, it's certainly not. Drowner, one of the key cards against Enforcers. But yes, I sort of counterintuitively, the way to counter it is just dropping them straight in the weather, like you mentioned.
At least you counter the Drowner, so you have that going for you at least. GameKing here just going to set up that Rider and set up that extra bit of damage for the rest of the turn, or maybe he's going to, you know, shut me up and play something different. Instead, he decides to bamboozle me and then go ahead and play the Rider, and just make sure he gets the maximum tempo right from the start on that Frost.
Yeah, there we go. That's that Frost going to be taking 3 damage a turn, except when it's going to hit a 2 damage ammo. Of course, it will deal 2 damage. But yeah, that's going to mean that over a long round, that Frost just does such savage damage because he knows that while Lifecoach has Vanamar in hand, he is not going to want to spend that because he knows that if he does, round 3 is going to be painful.
Like you said, there's some very awkward cards right now. I mean, Slizzard would need to find maybe a Frost Hunt if that Frost Hunt is pinged down by an Enforcer, for example, to try and draw that out and get some extra Frost. But then Vanimar can just be played and just clear it all out, and also, you know, heal everything as well. So it's tricky, really.
Yeah, and here we see just an Emissary coming out from Rain Phalanx because Joaquin and Cantarella are both in the hand of Lifecoach, and another Enforcer comes down, just establishing that presence on the board.
And Lifecoach is now deciding which row he wants to play on. Maybe he's going to stack the back row, although he might be scared of maybe a potential last rate from GameKing. So he thought about it there, but decides in the end to stack that back row and keep those Enforcers alive for as long as possible.
Yeah, and that Emissary being executed with the final crossbow bolt does mean that Vicar Varomedic is able to resurrect it, and Lifecoach can keep his Spy Train moving without spending the other Emissary in his hand.
Yeah, the Spy Train, I mean, no stops at all. It's going to go full force, and the Vicar Varomedic and the Emissaries really help to do that. Thin out your deck, get the Spy synergy, the points on the Enforcers and the Imperial Brigades, and really end up in a short round 3 with a very thin deck and pretty much, you know, the exact same finisher every single game. Joachim into a big unit, into Menno, and you end up winning, you know, a lot of games. That's why Spies is really tier 1.
Yeah, it's an absolute, like, sort of, you know, nigh upon a 0% fail rate deck, right? You know how your tactics is going to go each game. So this is one of the strengths of the deck, and it's one of the weaknesses of the Origin deck because, like we saw, GameKing narrowly avoided not drawing any hounds. That would have been disastrous. A disastrous draw 2 games in a row for GameKing.
We see GameKing playing on his hound and, you know, thinning out these Frosts, but that might just decide give Lifecoach the chance to play the Van Hemar and clear that Frost out. Of course, though, it'll give GameKing the chance to maybe go into round 3 with a few Frosts left and no Van Hemar in sight.
Your words mean nothing
so here comes Vanamar. He's gonna cliss, guys. So there we go. That is Vanamar out of contention for like round 3, which is a pretty interesting development in this game because it means that cards like Slizzard can be used to play more Frosts onto the board, and Caranthir as well, allowing at least 2 rows to be frosted from what I can see.
But it also means that Lifecoach will have he's a card up right now unless he can get back the card advantage. So it's troublesome for GameKing. If he were to pass now, he would have a long round 3, but he's going to be a card down. So I think he's going to go for a long round 2, try and really, you know, squeeze out the maximum tempo from, or the maximum value from the Igni from his Frost, now that he knows that there is no clear left.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to really try to breathe Lifecoach for everything that he's worth, which is gonna be rough because he needs to frost in a row that opens up Drowner play on those Enforcers.
Yeah, and we see, obviously, this Lizard not ideal right now. He needs more Frost in this round. He knows there's no clear. He knows he can go all out with, you know, these frosty effects, and he knows that with only 1 Frost, it might not be enough to really get enough value over a long round.
Yeah, so the weather row is now open, so the Drowner counter has sort of been negated a little bit. That does open up a lot of tempo options for GameKing, but it just doesn't compare to the tempo play of Nilfgaard.
And we have to look at the Caretaker targets as well if you want to use Caretaker in this turn. I mean, not drawing Iris is huge. If he finds it with Gills, it can be massive, but of course there's no Frost in the back row, and the Rider right now is dead in the back row as well, so we have to find another Rider as well, which can be done with Slizzard, so there are chances, and once that Iris goes off, Infiltrators and Menno are going to deal with at least 1 big unit, but oh no. We see the chance for Slizzard to be played with Iris.
There is the Slizzard Iris potential. Will GameKing see it? If any player does, his love for Iris is known above all others, so I certainly hope he does. But speaking of Caretaker, there is actually currently nothing in Lifecoach's graveyard, so it'll be anything he kills will be the Caretaker target. But he sees the Iris there. Will he go for it though? That is the question.
And there's an enormous point cap as well. If GameKing doesn't pass here and he plays low tempo, Cantarella can be played even because you have the Enforcers on the board as well to get that extra tempo. And I love the Iris from Lifecoach. It buffs up the Enforcers. It makes it so they don't die instantly to Drowners into the Frost. And it says, you know, I'm going to use one of my win conditions maybe in this round where I can guarantee the value and push you out of it. You don't have Frightener. You don't seem to have Frightener. And we're going to go into a long round 3.
Yeah, here's a reasonable Igni from GameKing that he's considering. It's going to be a 16-point Igni, and also it removes an Enforcer, so really the actual value of that Igni in the longer round is much higher because it denies the damage that they deal. So decent Igni all round from GameKing.
And I think it definitely guarantees that GameKing is staying in this round for a long time. If you use Igni, which is almost a win condition against Spies, you kind of know there's going to be a big unit with Joachim, for example. You know that if you go into a short round 3, or you know a moderately short round 3, you can move around the rows with the Drowners and almost guarantee a great Igni. Using it round 2 means, you know, I'm going to go full force in this round and really try and bleed you out.
Yeah, that's definitely what he's got to do, because he knows... The problem is, I can't help but feel like with only 6 cards in hand, he's very quickly approaching the stage where Nilfgaard is just going to roll over him in a much shorter round. Exactly.
I mean, he doesn't have a rider. He doesn't have a caretaker target. He's going to depend a lot on what he draws with Gills. You can, of course, get a Slizzard from the... you can get an Irish from the Slizzard, but there's no rider to instantly kill it, so can that be played around? I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, he may be fishing for his Toad Prince again with Gills, probably only to be greeted by a buyer, knowing his luck so far, but the Toad Prince would be nice, but really, he's getting to the very, very dangerous area.
And the Caretaker can always draw maybe an Enforcer. It can take that from Lifecoach's graveyard, and that'll help with the Iris, the instant proc, the damage, and then the Frost killing it instantly, so there is that option as well, and he's looking to the graveyard now, looking at his targets and deciding if that's, you know, actually the right play to make right now.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he's going to go for the Slizzard. Slizzard's going to come down for the Iris. There it is. And that is going to go... Is he going to go... Yeah, he's just going to let that tick away in the Frost.
It's interesting. Do you think...
He's considering the Drowner for the instant kill, but...
I am sadness.
Just going to get Frost. It's the same, essentially. He's got to wait a turn regardless.
And he knows that he has an Enforcer for the Caretaker, but obviously not the most fantastic target. I think you definitely want something at least, you know, silver or, you know, a really situational bronze that can give you a ton of value.
I cast myself upon thy mercy.
Oh, we see the buff on the Irish, which is
Next,
huge from the ambassador. It's massive.
Oh my goodness, you can't see us right now, but if you could, you would see how much we just winced when that came out. That is a horrible play for GameKing to be faced with, and a pretty awesome play for Lifecoach to pull off. And that is just so rough for him.
The Igni has been wasted. There's no real easy way to kill a 13-point unit on Lifecoach's side. If we would have seen the Caretaker come out, once that Enforcer is out on your board and that Iris comes down, you can ping it instantly and kill it in that round. But because he played a bit riskier and decided not to use the Caretaker, now he's greeted with a 13-point Iris. I mean, I don't think she's sadness anymore.
She is not sadness. She is strength, if anything. But this is getting to really precarious ground for GameKing. Here comes the Gills. There's the Toad Prince. Okay, he's going to be pretty happy with that. That's a 19-point Toad Prince, essentially, because of the Gills. So that's going to eat the Manticore away, get an extra Drowner into his hand. All in all, not a bad Toad Prince.
But if that Iris doesn't die, you essentially played for very low, I mean, 0 tempo, right? With the Slizzard. Well, you have the Slizzard at least, so it balances out. But it really isn't ideal at all.
I'm falling behind.
That is not ideal whatsoever. And he's just got no way to access that Iris. That Iris is not going anywhere, but the Nausicaa Brigade will certainly be cracking some skulls.
And we see Cantarella as well from Lifecoach's side. I mean, he's going to have a stronger finish, I think, for sure, with the Joachim, for example. Caretaker going to be a decent finisher, but I don't think he's going to find... I mean, he has Kalec, for example, but that's really it in a short round.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the Nausicaa Brigade executing the Ambassador, and of course, Imperial Enforcer takes a shot at... What's it going to be? It's going to be the Rider?
He's trying to bamboozle us against it this time. This time it's Lifecoach deciding to you know, play around with us a bit, but goes for the Emissary instead, and he's still, you know, a card up, a lot of points up. I mean, Lifecoach is in a very good position, and he has his finisher still intact. He has Menno, he has Infiltrator, he has that Vigavara Medic, and he has maybe to res that Emissary that he just killed, and he has Cantarella, which isn't great, but he can play it out now if he wants, if he finds the, you know, the correct gap.
Yeah, definitely. I think that GameKing is getting in a rougher and rougher position. This is just ignoring the whole Joaquin Menno sitting in Lifecoach's hand. GameKing is not looking fantastic right now.
With that Iris stat, the game would be completely different, but because that Ambassador play was able to buff it up, and there is no real way for GameKing to kill it in his hand, he has a lot of genres, he can kind of juggle it around, but it'd be pretty tedious. Maybe he's going to go for just that.
There we go. We see the Nausicaa getting hauled into the Frost to take some damage. At this point, it's just a bleed play. It doesn't make a significant difference to the round.
Yeah, he's trading bronze cards for maybe higher value cards from Lifecoach, but even then, I mean, your finisher is a monster knife, which is going to be decent on a Manticore. It's a 20-point card, but without card advantage with Menno and Infiltrator in the background sneaking around, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Even if you get a huge unit, I mean, it's going to be very, very vulnerable.
I mean, that Igni is just sitting on GameKing's siege right, taunting him that he didn't burn the Iris. It's a really, really rough play. Jeez, so we're going to see most likely just a Enforcer come out, right?
Or, I mean, if you want to thin,
the Infiltrator.
It doesn't matter too much, but the Infiltrator can open up that Menno in this turn if he needs it,
that's true.
And also just maybe save. I mean, Enforcer round 3 isn't great to pull with.
Yeah, he could Menno the Toad just sort of preemptively in case he does need it.
or you can thin your deck out if you think you're in a very comfortable position, which he kind of is in maybe. He wants to get the Enforcer to thin it out and have a better Infiltrator drawn round 3, but instead he does go for the Infiltrator, which kind of puts a lot of pressure on GameKing. He plays a little bit safer, I think.
That's like an intense safety play. I mean, having an 18-point unit be marked as disloyal opens up a 26-point Menno, which is just not something that GameKing can contest with. So I would expect to see this round come to a close fairly quickly, but I think GameKing's gone past the point of no return. I think he's played this round way too far.
Yeah, with an Iris on your board, you're still, you know, a bit scared, a bit skeptical. It is a 13 strength, so it's not maybe going to get killed very easily, but if it is killed, you want to make sure you have the chances to catch back up in tempo with the Menno, with the Giant Toad, for example, or the Toad Prince with its new acquired title. So I think Lifecoach played very safely here. He definitely wants to make sure he can clear out this game in a correct and consistent and safe manner and not really risk it. Being 2-0 up, he wants to make sure he has the best chance to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason. Well, even GameKing highlights it as his weakness, right? It's like, yeah, when I'm 2-0 up, I kind of, you know, start thinking I'm already in the semi-final. Lifecoach definitely not falling victim to that, taking every card very, very seriously indeed. But that is a savage blow.
And we see GameKing maybe thinking about going for trying to kill that Iris, but is there any way to do it? I mean, the Enforcer does 2 points of damage, it goes down to 9, and the Drowner can hit it for another 6 if it gets under the points of the 5-strength Enforcer on the row, but I think it's just not enough.
I think it's not enough because I think it would be that Imperial Enforcer would have tanked a hit from the Frost, so it would be on 2, so it wouldn't even get hit by the Frost. Sorry, it would be on 3, so it wouldn't even get hit by the Frost. I don't think there's a way that he can kill that Iris right now.
I think it's really tough for GameKing here. He doesn't really have a way out.
No, he doesn't. And by looks on his face, he's looking very frustrated. I think he knows that this game is not in a position where he wanted it to be in.
Let us see.
Cantarella come out from Lifecoach. That just filled the forts. My goodness.
And this allows Lifecoach to maybe save that Menno for round 3 and just decide to play Vilgefortz here if he needs to play another card here, which he definitely does right now. So maybe that's his option. He decides to save the Infiltrator Menno combo for round 3, and GameKing going all the way here, going for this Monster's Nest, this Drowner, potentially going to move the Iris, but I mean, is it enough? It's going to move the Rainfall. I mean, he just
I think at this point he's just picking which card he likes the least, to be honest. He's going to move Iris in. She betrayed him in the past, never again, because I don't think that's going to have effect on this game.
And again, the Iris at 7 strength, not even going to get affected by the Frost. We see the Enforcer obviously at 5 strength, and you get obviously you're going to get hit before because it is a lower strength unit. So GameKing a lot of points ahead, but we do see the Menno into a Toad possibility to catch right back up and not be 1 card up, but be 2 cards up. I mean, it's massive for Lifecoach.
Yeah, this is a really, really horrendous situation for GameKing to be in. I think that, you know, when you push to this short around against Nilfgaard, it's just so dangerous because they have such powerful 1 cards. So this is going to be very, very rough. I don't particularly see a way out for GameKing here.
This has happened not just one matchup, but in every single round. GameKing has gone into a long round 2, trying to get back card advantage, but it's just too much. Menno proving why he's in this deck, you know, a fantastic card. And of course, the Nausicaa Brigade into the Iris. That is what he wanted to do. That was his option.
Not bad at all.
Completely wrong. A huge point swing here.
100% debated.
100% debated. The Cantarella does get buffed, but Menno has been played already, so that does not matter. And now Lifecoach completely, I mean, GameKing turn around the match completely.
He's not mic'd up right now, but Swim is looking shocked, I will tell you that much. That was an incredible Nausicaa Brigade from GameKing right there. Lifecoach truly knocked for 6, all of us in fact. I'm sure the 800 IQ Twitch chat was yelling about that, but that is an incredible Nausicaa Brigade on the Iris and a great line of sort of forethought in setting that up.
He set that up from about 5 turns before. I mean, he moved the Nausicaa Brigade first to get it to 9 strength, and then he played into that, the Iris obviously going into 7 strength, and just the right amount for the Nausicaa Brigade to kill it and buff itself, and then buff the whole board by 25 points. And I mean, Lifecoach now has completely changed the story. I mean, the Frost still ticking. He does have the Vilgefortz, which could be enough if he draws correctly, but he might just have to use the Infiltrator as well.
Oh my goodness. What? Oh, it's a Nausicaa. It's gonna kill.
It's gonna kill the you have the Joaquin target there,
right? Yeah.
Which will be a buff, but it won't be enough for the Frosting as well.
So we're gonna go top deck v top deck.
And there are still
semi-final places.
Very bad cards left in GameKing's deck. He does still have a Frost Town. He does still have a Frost. He has some cards he does not want to see. So we're gonna go into 100%.
Let's go 1 card v 1 card. It all comes down to this for a place in the semi-final tomorrow. Facing Freddy Babes. There's the Frost. That's going to get mulligan, but hey, at least the Frost will be gone. There's
and the Emissary, I mean,
oh
two cards that aren't ideal. We're going to see what each player does.
What draws are these?
And the Frost Hound.
4 points. Can you beat 4 points?
Emissary, I think, does it as long as there are bronze.
I think Emissary does it. Emissary does it, I believe.
Do it.
He's going to keep it. He's going to keep it. He's going to keep it. Oh my goodness.
A shame
but
I
that
have
hand
no
has
time.
Frost.
Yeah, it is going to be a 6-point play in the end.
8. It's going to be
Impaired Brigade is going to be 8. It's going to be a tie.
Is this going to be a tie?
It might be. We have to pick up our medic. Medic will be better, of course. Yeah. It adds 1 extra point. And it can also block the Frost, so it's 2 extra points.
Oh, it's 13 straight Nausicaa Brigade,
and a 13
of course, yeah.
So.
Okay, oh my goodness, that was so close though.
The Imperial Brigade would have been a tie.
My heart just lurched, I was like, wait, Frost 6 points? That's a tie. And I was like, okay, no, there's a huge Nausicaa Brigade sitting right there. So there we go. Oh my goodness, that is Lifecoach taking it 3-0 to secure his place in tomorrow's semi-finals, beating out GameKing, but in some very close games.